This is the legend of the Navigator who crossed the ice wall and the Marines versus the Giants. So a quick update. At this point, it's been years since they first navigated and crossed the ice walls to get to the ancestral lands. William Morris went on to remarry and have a daughter, Helen Morris, but unfortunately, he was very sick from being born and living in the known lands for so long. The ancestors, though they had a super advanced technology, were not able to totally heal William Morris. The poisons in the air had infiltrated his system and he was just too far gone. So there was just nothing they could do to help him with the situation. It was right around the early 1800s, and Admiral Butler and Captain Morris were planning another trip to the known lands. Prior to this, they weren't able to infiltrate them because the custodians had such a tight grip on the boundaries and the entrances into the known lands. And the same goes for underwater. They had all the passages completely locked up. But little did they know, a being had showed up out of nowhere to the ancestral lands from the Cassiopeia lands. This being was highly technologically advanced, and he was able to share with the ancestors a way to infiltrate domes. Prior to this, they didn't really have the tech or the know-how to infiltrate domes like the custodians and the Anunnaki did. So after the beings from Cassiopeia gave them this new technology, they were able to create a portal going into the known lands. They would exploit and use this portal for many years until finally the custodians were able to find it. And of course, upon figuring out this portal's existence, they ramped up the military in that area, all along the ice wall and Antarctica. We're talking thousands of military bases, thousands of military personnel, even regulars or humans that were converted and actually were part of the custodian military. This, coupled with a new technology that they had instilled, made it very hard to infiltrate the known lands. This new technology was a radar system that actually caused earthquakes. So given these factors, you had to infiltrate the lands with the utmost precision. So they were going to use the iron blue and do it by air, just over the passage they had originally taken by ship after the Revolutionary War. So Captain Butler, William Morris, and two other crew members hopped on the old Iron Blue, and they began their ascension. As they reached the Iron Blue's top speed, they were climbing to heights higher than William Morris had ever been before, so high that he could vividly make out the waters from above. Then suddenly they began making their way towards the Great Dome. Thoughts were racing through Captain Morris's mind. That's when Butler looked over at him and told him, rest assured, everything will go as planned. This calmed Morris as they descended to what was considered a safe height to be under the radars of the custodians. Everything grew silent, and although they lowered to a speed that seemed safe to enter the tunnel, when they entered it, they were back at light speed. The entire ship was shaking frantically when suddenly they were spit out at the other side, right around 2,300 feet. As they exited the portal, the Iron Blue didn't smooth out like they expected. "What's going on?" said Morris. "I don't know," said Butler. "Something isn't right. We gotta land this thing." The pilot next to Butler was able to right the ship, but regardless, they were losing altitude rapidly. They'd find themselves landing in a wooded area between two high mountain passes. They maneuvered her as gently as they could, but her wings would crash into the trees as she landed. "So this is how my return to the no lands is gonna go," thought William. They got out of the ship in disarray. "Hopefully the custodians didn't spot us on the way down," said Butler. "The best thing we can do right now is gain a little separation from the ship. That way we aren't waiting here like sitting ducks, just in case they did," said William. "Where are we?" said one of the Marines. "I don't know. We seem to be on one of the southernmost islands of Antarctica," said Butler. So they started heading deeper into the wilderness, where there was a dense fog about 10 feet or so off the ground. You could barely see anything in front of you. Regardless, they kept moving forward. At this point, they were about 900 meters away from the ship and heading north, when suddenly they began hearing something crashing through the woods. So they hid in some thick grass and waited. They sat there for about a minute when suddenly the sound stopped. Nothing but silence. So another minute goes by, then 2, then 3, then 5. At this point, they figured whatever it was must have gone. So they went to get up, but as soon as they did, they were shocked as a soldier was standing there with AR-15, but he quickly put his left hand on the gun and raised his right hand, signaling that he was a friendly. He motioned to them silently, "Stay quiet and come to me." Butler said they should do what he asked, and they all make their way towards him. What was this soldier doing patrolling in this part of the known lands, thought William. I didn't think there was any humans that even knew these lands existed. Butler explained, "Let me handle this. I'll do the talking," as they walked up to the soldier and greeted him. He then asked what battalion they were from, and Butler answered quickly and in detail, making sure the soldier didn't question anything. The soldier then introduced himself as Charlie and began handing them fruits and rations. He then explained how he got there and how confused he was that he was there at all. Charlie then patted Morris on the right shoulder, giving him condolences for being there. "Human brothers," he'd say. "It's always good to have a brother to walk alongside me." They started questioning his mental health at that point. If he really knew what was going on around him, he'd soon find out that they were the ones unaware of the current situation. "Ah," said Charlie to himself, "now I understand. You are new, and you haven't seen the killer beast yet, have you?" They all looked at each other, baffled as to what the hell he could be talking about. Friends, I'm curious to see the look on your faces when these beasts come upon you in an instant, because I have seen it on everyone's faces that has seen them up to this point. "Listen," said Butler. "What beasts are you talking about?" "You'll see," said Charlie, as he pointed his rifle towards the horizon. "There, he's right over there. Look, you'll see him. He's lying down. Hold on, he'll move in just a second." Morris and the rest of his crew stared in that general direction, when suddenly, out of nowhere, a massive giant stood up. The beast was at least 15 feet tall, maybe even 20, but he and Butler had never seen this species of giant before. "The blue beings. Did you talk to the blue beings?" said Charlie. They all shrugged, as if not understanding. "You fellas sure are some odd new agents. Where are you from?" We could do this later. We gotta get out of here. In due time, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Follow me." They begin walking in the opposite direction of the giant. "This war makes no sense at all," Charlie said. "Rather, none of war really does, but this one more so than others. We are at war with beings we didn't even know existed until a couple days ago. And these beings obviously don't understand our culture. They act more out of repetition. It's the same thing, almost like Groundhog's Day. It just keeps repeating itself. I thank God you guys showed up. I was starting to feel insane. I think I'm the last one. I was just going to give up." Butler, starting to understand what was going on, sat him down, gave him some water, and said, "Relax, it'll all be all right." They and Butler already knew what was going on. This Charlie seemed to be part of a Machiavellian-type game, a perverse game, a game where lives didn't even matter. It was clear to all of them that this was obviously a game put on by the custodians, a sick, twisted game of survival. Beasts versus soldiers of the known lands. Charlie finally started to catch his breath, and he looked around at beings like him, and this seemed to calm him in the moment. They asked him questions to better understand his situation and what had happened to him. He claimed that he had no idea how he had gotten there. The destination was to reach a base in Antarctica, or so we were told by a military man who claimed to be in charge. We had never seen him before. Some of us were sent to an unusual base in southern Argentina. We were put on a warship. They explained the basics about the mission we were supposed to carry out in Antarctica Peninsula, and it was only about logistics, guiding and taking care of scientists who were going to transport elements for meteorological studies. That was basically what we were informed on. Among the military chiefs, there were also other people with strange dark clothes. They seemed to come out of another time. They had dark glasses and did not look directly at us, but avoided us or ignored us completely. Some of my fellow soldiers began asking questions, and that's when they gave us something to drink. They said we had to. As I drank, it was this rather thick and disgusting liquid. Then my legs started to feel a weird sensation. Then my waist. Then my chest seemed to burst, and I fainted. I woke up among the rocks and the swamp, while unknown people were running and screaming in pain around me. I had this gun, you see, and just as I woke, I got up and started shooting at the beast. They were slowly approaching me from afar. Almost for the same survival, none seemed to understand the situation around us. There was only one very quiet man who was sitting looking at the ground, but his calmness was really admirable. I approached him and shouted several times for him to follow us. Those beasts were taking soldiers with their hands and were shaking them on the ground as if they were made of paper. they would slam them. The nightmare was only just beginning. You guys seen those blue beings? He looked around and asked. We saw them the sixth night here. We moved away from the focus where those beasts seemed to live and secluded ourselves along the coast. They tried not to light fires, but the cold and hunger became a worse struggle than those beasts. We go whole days without tasting any food. We had no choice but to make small and divided during the daylight so as not to raise so much suspicion. Or that's what we imagined. But as I was telling you, after the sixth night, very early in the morning when the sun was just rising, a large boat appeared on the horizon and approached until it got as close to the coast where we were. 3 of those blue beings appeared overboard. They were very strange because the sun hit them and seemed to go through them. The sunlight turned blue when it touched their bodies. Many of our companions who were camping tried to swim towards their boat as an escape. I thought about it too. But then the boat started shooting at them. Confusion swarmed the entire crew. We had these huge beasts behind the vegetation waiting for us, and from the sea, a boat arrives and began to shoot at us. How can I explain this whole experience? It's so confusing. After killing several soldiers, the boat began to leave, but not before throwing several huge boxes near the shore. We did not trust them after the chilling scene we just saw, but we thought that maybe it was information, something that would explain to us or give us a certain path to follow, or maybe some food. So we had no choice but to open them and bring them to shore as soon as possible. Inside them were more weapons of war, more advanced weapons than we had so far. Grenades, night vision binoculars, and one of the 3 large boxes were sheets that, in addition to detailing the inventory that had been sent to us, it had a list of our names and said, "Freedom is obtained by killing the 7 giants that live on these islands. And once the 7th is killed, an automatic door out will open." Some group took the weapons and headed west, others went to another sector, while others stayed trying to process everything that was going on. It was very confusing. But I knew that dividing up, terrible idea. And I was right. The next night was chilling. They were terrible. We could hear gunshots and screams, then explosions. The giants were definitely gaining the upper hand. We even saw one soldier launched up to 50 feet in the air, his body mangled. At this point, there were only 8 of us left in the group, so we decided that no matter what, we would stick together. And as we were walking through the woods, we suddenly came up on one of them and began running in the opposite direction. Time is weird here. It seems very out of touch with our reality, with my reality. We just continued running in the opposite direction, not knowing that all the while, the giant beast was right on our tail. Eventually, he got within 2 meters of us and grabbed up one of the soldiers. I instantly turned around, firing my rifle, just out of pure instinct, and got lucky hitting it in the eye. It let out a piercing scream. These things can scream in deafening tones. As it was angry, it managed to snatch up one more soldier, but this time, it was one I was very close to. We went through all of base together. He was my best friend. Butler, realizing how much danger they were in after hearing his story, said, "Sorry for your loss, but we gotta get going. Let's get out of here." He didn't know the purpose of this game, but sometimes there didn't need to be one. The custodians just did this type of thing. And Butler knew that these giants had no relation to the ones that he knew. These were genetically modified super soldier abominations. As they were getting ready to leave, suddenly 2 giants appeared, one behind the rock they were standing in front of and one in front of them. They had them cornered. Charlie shouted out, "These damn giants, I'm tired of this reality." He ran towards one of the giants, firing his automatic weapon. At first it didn't look like they were doing much damage, but as he fired more rounds, you could clearly see that it was hurting the giant. But as he was doing this, the giant raised a massive piece of sheet metal that he had acquired from one of the boxes that the custodians had left them. He reached to the sky as high as he could with it, and then threw it at Charlie, hitting him, ending his life. Though he died, his shots proved to be effective, and the giant died shortly thereafter. Then the other giant, after seeing his comrade fall, ran out of fear. These giants were more automated than they were intelligent. Later, they go back and retrieve Charlie's body, giving him a proper burial. That night, they found shelter in a small abandoned cave, waiting till morning to head back to the ship. "There's something odd about these lands," Butler said to Morris. "They're not a part of reality. They're hidden, almost in like a parallel reality. I don't know how we missed them. And those beasts, they remind me of the Patagons, a race of giant from another land. but they had been genetically manipulated. There you have it, folks. Absolutely mind-blowing encounter with Captain Butler and William Morris. I never saw that coming when I first read the story. Who would have thought that custodians play or facilitate like Hunger Games like scenarios, or like they said, Machiavellian type scenarios? Survival of the fittest, survival in extreme conditions. It's like some Alien vs. Predator type stuff right there. And could you imagine what those soldiers were going through? It's absolutely terrifying thinking you join the military to serve your country, and before you know it, you're on some random island fighting giants. Absolutely crazy. And I can imagine it gets even crazier than that in some scenarios. Then this land, which time is or acts different. I'm not exactly sure where I think this is at. I haven't really looked at Google Earth yet. It's probably honestly nowhere to be found on any conventional maps or Google Earth. But regardless, crazy story. Next, we're going to have the conclusion of what takes place on this mission and what happens to Captain Morris. Stay in love, stay in light, be kind to others. I am out.